my cheating husband has a child with another woman and wants us to be one big family, only I refuse for that to be my future. I found out months ago that my husband had cheated on me, and his excuse was that he was tired of only being intimate with me in order to have a kid, even though he's the one that wants one. We talked through it, and after a while I decided to forgive him, as he promised it wouldn't happen again. I've had multiple treatments since then so I can get pregnant, and now that I am, it has only gone downhill from there. I have been struggling with hemorrhages and told my birth would be incredibly high risk. My husband has cared about none of this and has only pushed himself further away from me since the pregnancy announcement. For a while now, I have been caring for his sick mother, who has hip surgery and is in almost constant pain. He's been making my life extremely difficult. He'll take our one car just to go out bar hopping or whatever with his friends and leave me stranded at his mother's. He claims he needs the car more than me and will just drop me off at her place and disappear for hours. A few days ago, his mom tried going to the bathroom on her own and she slipped and hurt herself. I tried calling my husband, as we had no transportation and his mother doesn't have insurance, so I didn't want to call an ambulance, but of course he didn't pick up. I ended up getting a neighbor to help us by driving us both to the nearest hospital. She ended up needing to be admitted, and hours had gone by with no word from my husband. Eventually, my brother-in-law showed up to check on his mom and make sure everything was okay. I asked if he knew where my husband was because I was getting worried. He avoided eye contact and said it wasn't for him to say. I was confused, and I asked him to tell me if he knew something. That's when he came clean and told me my husband was at his other kid's gender reveal party. I was stunned and just looked at him like he was crazy. He went on to explain that when my husband cheated on me a few months ago, the woman ended up getting pregnant. Apparently, my husband has been providing for her, and they were doing a gender reveal party today to celebrate everything. He told me that his entire family knew, including his mother, and they had been keeping it from me, so I didn't freak out. I was furious. I couldn't believe that I had been practically killing myself taking care of a woman who kept this big of a secret from me, that I was carrying my husband's child that was literally killing me all because he told me he wanted a kid more than anything in the world. I was disgusted and called for an Uber to take me home. When my husband finally got home, I expected him to be apologizing to me, and I was prepared to reject all of it. Only instead, he came storming and furious, accusing me of abandoning his mother in her time of need. I asked what the hell he was talking about. Apparently, his brother had to leave earlier and just assumed I was still around, so he left, and their mother was left all alone in the hospital. Asked him if his brother happened to mention a conversation we had at the hospital. He admitted that he did, but he didn't expect me to take my anger out on his poor, defenseless mother, that I was a horrible person for abandoning her, and that I had no right to be acting so petty. I told him he had no right to not tell me he had another kid with another woman. He said he couldn't stand to look at me and said we would discuss in the morning, then went to bed. I couldn't believe anything that was happening and got angry all over again. I packed a bag and took an Uber to my sister's house. I told her everything, and she let me stay over and promised she would have my back no matter what. The next day, my husband kept calling and calling, demanding that I contact him so we could have a very important conversation. I agreed to meet at a restaurant near our house, as I didn't want him to know I was staying with my sister, who, as soon as he sat down, he started talking about how grateful he was to have two amazing women that loved him, both pregnant with his children, and that he couldn't stand to leave his other child out in the cold. He told me he decided it would be best if we became a polygyny household. That way we could all be one big happy family. I just laughed in his face. I told him I wasn't going to encourage his cheating and just be okay welcoming his mistress and her son into my home. He said it was his home too, and he had every right to bring home whomever he wanted. I told him he was crazy, and I wasn't okay with his plan in the slightest. He told me I'd better learn to be okay with it, as this was something he had decided for me. I told him no and got up to leave. He grabbed my arm and yanked me down. He told me I had better not defy him or I'd come to regret it. I wrestled my arm away from him and tried to leave the restaurant when he slammed me against a table, hitting my stomach. I got the wind knocked out of me, and thankfully some good Samaritans stepped in to force him off of me. Two guys walked me outside to wait for my Uber, while another detained my husband inside the restaurant so I could leave. As soon as I got to my sister's place, I started crying, and she just held me. I told her I hated him, and I couldn't stand to be pregnant anymore. That I didn't want to have a baby in the first place, and now I was stuck with something inside me that could lead to my death, all for a man who cheated and lied and was threatening my safety. She suggested that I go to the doctors and see if I was still able to get an abortion, as the pregnancy would qualify for an emergency because of my hemorrhages. I took her advice, and my doctor said it was possible. I decided to go through with it, and I planned to tell my husband and his entire family that I lost the baby because he slammed me into a table. I'd like to see if they still support him after learning that I needed to organize my thoughts before taking action. Everything felt like a blur, but the anger and disgust I felt were as clear as day. I spent the following days at my sister's house trying to regain some sense of control over my life. Every call he made, every message he sent only fueled my disdain. He insisted we needed to talk, but I knew there was nothing he could say to justify what he had done. When the moment arrived, I decided it was time to act. I invited his entire family to dinner at a neutral restaurant. I sent polite messages, making it seem like I wanted to resolve the conflicts and that it was important to have everyone together. My sister thought I was losing my mind, but I reassured her that I knew exactly what I was doing on the set. Night, I calmly got ready, choosing an outfit that exuded confidence. My heart was racing, not out of fear, but in anticipation of finally turning the tables. When I arrived at the restaurant, he was already there with his parents, brother, and even the mistress, who looked uncomfortable. She was visibly pregnant, and seeing her made my stomach churn, but I took a deep breath. This wasn't about her, it was about him. I greeted everyone with a fake smile and sat at the head of the table, strategically positioned to control the situation. As soon as everyone ordered their drinks, I stood up and lightly tapped my glass with a spoon, drawing their attention. Before we start, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I think we can all agree that it's time to lay everything out on the table, don't you? He looked suspicious, but tried to maintain a calm facade. I began by talking about how I felt abandoned during the pregnancy and how I had been taking care of his mother while he was absent. My voice was controlled, but every word carried calculated weight. Then, without warning, I dropped the bomb. I lost the baby. I paused, letting the words sink in. And do you know why? Because the man I was supposed to call my husband slammed me against a table. The silence was deafening. I could see the shocked faces, the wide eyes of his mother, and the tense expressions of the others. He tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand. I'm not done. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of months of betrayal, abandonment, and lies. And now he wants to turn this into a polygamous household where we all pretend everything is fine while he continues to live his life as he pleases. His mother started crying and his brother tried to intervene, but I continued. You all knew, every single one of you knew about his child with another woman, about the affair, and yet you let me care for her, ignoring everything I was going through. You have no idea what it cost me. He tried to defend himself, saying I was exaggerating, that losing the baby was an accident, but I was ready for that. I pulled out an envelope containing the doctor's documents, confirming my health condition and the risks the pregnancy posed. I handed it to his mother, who turned pale as she read. It's all here, proof that he knew the risks and still treated me like garbage. This is the man you're defending. The mistress tried to say something, but I cut her off with a look. You're as much a victim as I was. He used you just like he used me. The difference is now you know who he really is. He was red with rage, but couldn't do anything. I calmly stood up, grabbed my bag, and left them all. They're shocked and silent before leaving. I looked directly at him. This is just the beginning. Enjoy it well while you can, because I won't stop until you pay for everything. I returned to my sister's house that night, feeling a mix of relief and determination. I knew the battle was far from over. He still had allies, and I would need to be smart to face him. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control again. As I looked out at the city through the window, I thought of all the ways to expose more of his lies, destroy the illusions he had built, and ensure that no one else would fall victim to him. This was far from over. He still didn't know who he was messing with. After that night at the restaurant, I returned to my sister's house with a clear plan. I had already started the game, but I knew there was still much to do to ensure he paid for everything. My sister, the worried, supported me in every decision. It was time to take this to the end without looking back. The next day, I began preparing my next move. I called a lawyer and explained the situation in detail. He was horrified by what he heard, especially about the physical and emotional abuse I endured, and assured me we had more than Enough material to build a solid divorce. Case the goal wasn't just to protect my future, but to ensure he didn't walk away. And scathed while the legal process began, I decided it was time to confront his family directly. They thought they could continue ignoring the chaos he had caused, but I wouldn't allow it. One afternoon, while he was out probably with his mistress, I went to his mother's house, bringing my sister along as a witness. I knew she wouldn't be able to deny the facts with someone else present. When we arrived, his mother was sitting in the living room with his brother and father. The atmosphere turned tense the moment I walked in. His mother tried to start with that fake sympathy she always used, but I cut her off. Don't worry, I'm not here to pretend everything's fine. I'm here to set things straight. You knew everything, didn't you? You knew about the affair, the child, and yet you let me take care of you, using me like some kind of emotional maid. She went pale and started stammering, but I continued. Don't come at me with excuses. You knew what he was doing, and you still chose to cover for him. What was your excuse? That he's your son, that you didn't want to see the family fall apart. Well, guess what? It already has, and you had a hand in it. His brother tried to intervene, saying it wasn't fair to blame his mother, but my sister immediately jumped in. Not fair. And what was fair to my sister? You all stood by while she was lied to, manipulated, and used. What kind of family does that? His father, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. It wasn't our intention to hurt you. We just wanted to protect the grandchild you were expecting. I laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. Protect? You didn't protect anyone but him. And guess what? There's no grandchild anymore. I lost the baby, and he's the reason why he slammed me against a table during an argument. Do you still think he's someone worth protecting? His mother started crying, but I had no empathy left to offer. This wasn't about her. It was about the weight I carried alone while everyone pretended everything was fine. I continued. I'm divorcing him. I'm going to expose everything he did, every lie, every betrayal, every act of violence. You all have a choice. Keep pretending he's a good man, or accept the truth and do something decent for once in your lives. I walked out without waiting for an answer. They could deal with their guilt however they wanted. That was no longer my problem. In the following days, things began moving quickly. My lawyer secured a restraining order against him, preventing him from coming near me or my sister. Additionally, we filed a divorce petition that included charges of abuse and emotional damages, but that wasn't all. I decided it was time to expose who he truly was to the rest of the world. I shared my story on social media, including details without names about how I had been betrayed, manipulated, and abused. The response was overwhelming. People who knew him began connecting the dots, and the story spread like wildfire. He, of course, tried to fight back. He claimed I was making everything up to ruin him, but the evidence was on my side. Text messages, photos, medical records. Everything proved who he really was. The final blow came when the mistress also decided to walk away from him after realizing she was being used just like I had been. She publicly confirmed that he had lied to her about the situation and even about her marriage. When the dust finally began to settle, he was completely isolated. His family didn't come out and scathed either. His mother became seen as an enabler, someone who had covered up her son's actions, and his brother faced criticism for standing by and doing nothing. They tried to make amends with me, but I rejected every attempt at reconciliation. In court, the divorce was a spectacle. He tried to argue that I was to blame, that I was emotionally unstable, but my lawyer dismantled every lie with the evidence we had me, and the judge ruled in my favor, granting me not only the divorce, but also substantial financial compensation for the harm he caused me. When I walked out of the courthouse that day, I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. He was ruined financially, emotionally, and socially. He no longer had a family to support his lies, nor a reputation to hide his true face. As for me, I finally felt free with the compensation money. I started a new life, far from that city and everyone who had been part of that nightmare. My sister came with me, and together we started something new. I knew there were still wounds to heal, but for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. As for him, I heard rumors that he tried to start over, but his reputation preceded him. No one trusted him, and everyone who knew his story avoided him. It was a fitting end for someone who built his life on lies. I looked out the window of my new home, thinking about everything I had been through. There was still a long road ahead, but I was ready. He thought he could destroy me, but he didn't know he had awakened something in me, a strength he would never understand. And if he or anyone in his family ever thought about trying something again, I knew exactly how to respond.